Welcome back to the Gutsiest Brands podcast, the show built around understanding the DNA of Gutsy Brands by talking to the world's most innovative brand leaders. At GutCheck, we make it our business to understand brands. And over the years, we've learned that some brands are just gutsy. So what makes a gutsy brand? We've identified 4 primary criteria that help us measure a gutsy brand. We feature brands that are empathetic, pioneering, bold, and demonstrate the power of and, those that see opportunity where others force trade-offs. When we find a brand leader that we think embodies gutsiness, we invite them to the show to explore what makes them so successful, what drives them every day, and to get their perspective on other gutsy brands out in the world. GutCheck CEO Rob Wengel had the chance to speak with Frédéric Charles Petit, the CEO of Toluna. Toluna is a technology company that delivers real-time insights at the speed of on-demand economy. In today's episode, Rob and Frédéric discuss the history of Toluna, how Frédéric tackles innovation, and how he tells the difference between a sign and a signal. Kick back and enjoy another episode of the Gutsiest Brands podcast.
Welcome, Frédéric, to the Gutsiest Brand podcast. We're thrilled to have you.
Hello, Rob. Very happy to be with you.
It's great to have you. So we're going to cover a variety of things today, and I'm sure our audience is excited to hear from you. But we really want to start with getting to know you a little bit as a person. So introduce yourself. Who are you? What's your background? Tell us who you are.
I'm Frédéric. I'm French. I live in Europe. I've spent some time in the US when I was much younger, and that's where I got very intrigued by at the time. I mean, it's funny. I mean, you said that, and immediately you sound so old. I was very intrigued by the internet and what we call the internet revolution at the time. And so, but my background, I come from a family. I lived in Tunisia when I was much younger. Great place. My family was kind of a bit of entrepreneur, I would say. My dad was an entrepreneur, and
so it's in your blood.
I don't know, it's in the blood, but it's the example, and I was always pushed to do better from my my family. What by that I mean, if I came, which was often with a grade from school, not so great, I was, rather than being told it's not good and you're not going to succeed, and I was told, I trust you, you're going to do better next time, I'm sure you're going to work very hard to do better. And so I got that as really something that I've tried to do in good period and more challenging period in the company, is that you have to manage people by trying to give them support rather than being. Yeah.
You were raised in an encouraging environment.
I believe so. I believe it was the case. I believe we were raised in that encouraging environment. And so I think that's something that almost I think is probably more important probably than where have you studied and did you get your study with honors or not? I think it's more important.
Tell us a little bit more of the story of Toluna. How did you think of the idea to begin with, and tell us a little bit about the journey?
Yes, so I'm my background was not market research or insights or data. I had a different background, but I really came to that idea because at the time I wanted to create a company. So that was the idea. I want to create a company, but I want to create a company with a purpose, not just. And I want to create a startup at the time. So I want to use technology, and I studied a number of different businesses, and I came up with this idea, which actually I have to say I brought back from the US at the time. Of consumer opinions, consumer reviews, like the power of people giving their opinion on product and services at scale to give kind of this word of mouth or the things that you would hear around yourself.
So you started with one idea. You had one paragraph in your business plan that is essentially what the business has become. Tell us how that kind of come to be.
Yeah, I mean, I founded this company in 2000. After 2001, there was this big financial crisis. The Nasdaq was at probably at its peak in 2000, but then it takes some time to look at the consequences of that drop and all that. So at that moment in time, I made a very, very big decision for the business, which was we're not going to be a shopping engine. We're not going to be, a European opinions.com, because actually we've raised a fraction of what we should have raised to become that. And we're not going to raise more money now. We're going to raise small amount of money. And so one thing that was key, and I've learned that very lucky to meet the right people, was we have to bifurcate that business. And so how do we bifurcate? We went back to our business plan and I said, well, we have thousands and tens of thousands of people, and this is a community. It's a vivid community of people, and they post their opinions, they exchange with each other, which was extraordinary for the time. We have a lot of time spent on the site by these people, and why don't we ask them a few questions and we begin by asking them questions, and then we said, well, let's do some surveys. Okay, let's do some surveys on those people. And then, we saw that they were really answering the survey. They loved it. We basically iterated and brainstormed, and we said, what can we do with that power of a community? And we were using those terms, a community of people who like to give their opinion. And how can we, let's be honest, how can we monetize that? How can we and we felt, well, research is a great place to be. And so we did that. And the second thing that we did is that we said, well, now we need to script a survey. Okay, we need to script those surveys. And we didn't find any tool that we were completely ignorant of research, we could use. It was so complex, so complicated, so convoluted. So the UI was so bad of all these survey tools that did exist that we said, well, we have those engineers, great people. They were supposed to build a great shopping engine. Let's build a survey scripting tool. And so we built that survey scripting tool. And, I went to see a couple of, clients along the line. And the client said, your research, it's great, but, you're not the best. I mean, at the time, you guys you're not the best of, or the most established research company, but can I see how you're doing this online research? I mean, it's a real meeting with the client.
Right.
And I showed him how we were scripting the survey, launching the survey, getting the response live in the system. And he said, I don't need to buy research from you. I want to buy this. I want to buy a subscription to that product. And so we basically build the technology legacy. I mean, the technology foundation of Toluna was built around 2000, 2001.
And one of the things you just described, even from the early days, that you might have started with one idea, but then you adapted it. We've all studied enough businesses to know that there are plenty of businesses that don't adapt and don't change. But it seems like you and your leadership team have historically recognized that you need to keep adapting to change. Talk a little about how you go about that.
Yeah, I mean, there's been many, many different changes. I mean, one is really looking at the market condition and saying, well, what we decide that doesn't work, or it will work ultimately, but not now. So how do we adapt to that? It's listening to the client. I mean, the problem is that when you're a startup and you're just beginning, you don't have enough client that you can really listen to them. And I mean, you're listening to the client that you have. The problem when you don't have enough client is that, I mean, it's your sample base is not big enough.
Sure.
You're just, so I think it was, to be honest, it was, I don't say that to please, it was gut. I mean, it was gut. It takes gut to an instinct to know that, yes, we believe online research is going to be the future. And okay, we believe that technology is going to be a key driving force for research, as it is for other industries. and we're going to stick on it. But the bifurcation comes from identifying signs. A sign is just one, and a signal bleeps. And when a sign becomes a signal, then it's a signal that you might want to do something about it. And
that's really well said.
And I think this is really, and it's making the difference. I always say you need to make the difference between a sign and a signal, because a sign might be just a bleep, and a signal, yeah, it's like SETI searching for, extraterrestrial intelligence. It's not a sign that it's a signal that you want to search for, and that's what we've been good at. Not always good at identifying these signals in the marketplace.
How you mentioned when you founded the company, you did see something similar in the US, you brought it to France, and that you not being a researcher, that you've taken a lot of you've generated a lot of your ideas by looking at other industries. Now that your company is more mature, where do you get your ideas? Do you still look at industries outside of your core industry to generate ideas? How do you?
Yes, I think that I looked at a lot at the advertising industry, marketing, the what we call the martech, marketing technology. I looked at these forces and I said the beauty about. I mean, I shouldn't be saying that, but I said at the time the beauty about research that you don't need to. I mean, I shouldn't be saying that because it's going to be looking. It's that you don't need to be a genius to innovate, because there are, within the vicinity of research, there are industries that were more advanced than research for many reasons, in technology adoption and in online adoption, and that you had to follow and look at those trends. So the way you communicate with people, the way you engage people. I mean, I'm talking for panel, the way you incentivize people, the way you conduct research, and why people would take online research rather than telephone or face-to-face or street-based research, and so on and so forth. So I think that I've looked at this, and then when this was done, and then the next generation of research came, I mean, driven by technology, we looked at, okay, how do you do advertising today? You do programmatic. So, why don't we do programmatic for, how we brought the research, and so on and so forth. I mean, you have to look at other industry to feed your ideas, but you need research expertise. You can't just you need the research expertise.
And you've used the word bifurcate a few times. You're operating a very large global business now. How do you go about thinking about future strategy? Do you set aside particular time? Do you generate ideas in a very purposeful process, or do the ideas come to you in different ways? Where do you get inspirations?
So I think that's great, because I believe in I used not to believe that much in process driven innovation, and because I kind of was I was not trusting the process. I felt that I always had a sense that you put processes to basically ease your fear of not investing where you should, and all that. But I think that as the company has scaled up and grown, you have to have this process, because you're talking about large financial resources that are being deployed, and you have to make sure that it's done in the right way. The way we've innovated historically, I told you, it's like really initially it was, I can't say it was like long session of brainstorming and analysis of market. It was really meeting client and prospect, and out of those meetings, understanding that there was a need. I walked in one of these meetings with a client, a prospect, back in 2002. It's a pharmaceutical company, and I'm trying to sell them consumer panel, or not that I'm a great sales guy in terms of, and they said, well, that's not what we need. We would like to be able to question physicians. And I said, well, we have the list of physicians, and we want you to handle the recruitment, and we want you to do this because you're doing that online. We want that to be online, and I came back from that and I said, we have to build a technology for custom communities. I swear, I mean, it was one meeting with one client, and I built that custom communities initially for that client, and that's one of the line of business that we've created. So I believe that you have to listen to client, not that they tell you what to do, but they basically give you define their needs and understand their needs. And when you understand their needs, you can build something. I think that's the way. Now, the way we are structured today, and Rob, I mean, you know that from a couple of weeks from the inside now, we are structured in a way where there is a product team that meets with client. We're doing a lot of surveys with buyers of research, buyer of insight to understand what they need. But we also rely on the engineering team. I think that's very important. Innovation without the engineering team can't exist, because you need to define needs and what you want to build, and you have to let the engineering team come back with a solution that might look completely different to what you expected. And I think that's what differentiates technology company from company who just send requirement to development team. And I always separate between development and engineering. Development is one thing, engineering is another thing.
It's an interesting observation and approach, because one of the things I've read is that there are a lot of companies who just send requirements and assume engineers just build to requirements. And as a result, a lot of it, I'm generalizing, but a lot of engineers actually have a very strong creative streak. And engineers who work for companies where they are not given the opportunity to really create end up having a separate hobby or a passion to use their creativity. And companies who actually recognize that developers can bring creativity and technical skills are the ones who absolutely get the most innovation out of their engineering team. I want to switch gears a little bit to talk about brands. Tell us, how did you come up with the brand name Toluna, and does it mean something?
There is no name. It doesn't mean Toluna doesn't mean it doesn't mean something, but it means something. And the name is great. We took that name because we felt you could pronounce the name in many different language. It's only we say syllabus in French. It's only it's 3 syllabus, Toluna. So it's not very long, so it's easy. And also, you could point out to the moon. And when when you shoot for the star, at least you can end up in the moon. I think that's a quote.
So obviously, your products, your services, your solutions are what clients are buying, but you have a global footprint. Are there any kind of key things you've done to build the brand around the world to make sure that what the value proposition is clear, and any kind of tips you might share with our listeners?
We've tried to, and that's a good question, because the company has evolved so much. The brand has had, for the buyer, because we're a B2B brand. So we have to really understand that we're a B2B brand. For the buyer of 2005 and the buyer of 2022, this is a completely different brand attribute. It's in 2005 you were buying mainly data collection. In 2022 you're buying a platform-based research or insight. You're buying what I call the best platform in the world, a platform curated for research. And so I think that one of the challenges is this evolution of the brand. Does the brand follow the evolution of the company and its product? And I have to say that when you're coming from a background where you're small and you're nimble and your advertising is directly to the buyer, the buyer. I mean, that's what defines the brand. And you're becoming global. You have to ensure that that consistency across the globe. I think one of the best things that we've done, but it's a long time ago, we've decided to have a global marketing team. So marketing was dispersed, and it was mainly operational marketing, like event-based, exhibition at the time. Yeah, field marketing. And we decided, no, we need to define, we had value for the company. We need to define the value for the brand, what the brand stands for, what's the mission of the brand in the market. So we built that manifesto, and I think that, and we're making sure that first and foremost, our own staff who are the best ambassador for the brand, they understand what that brand means, what the mission of the company means, and the company being, represented by that brand. But there is no secret sauce. I mean, it's a challenge. It's a challenge that's further, I would say, for Toluna, it's further complexified by the fact that the group doesn't operate only one brand. The group operates a kind of a family of brands.
The insights industry is crowded. And if you go to any of the research events, it feels like a sea of sameness, that a lot of companies are saying the same things, offering a similar message. Is that global scale the biggest differentiator for Toluna, or?
First of all, I won't say you said it's crowded. I would say it's fragmented.
I like that you took my word where I said we were crowded and said fragmented. So that actually, when you talk about the Toluna value proposition of creating a platform curated for research is very much driven by solving a client need. Then in that clients are, if you try to, we talk a lot about empathy and trying to put yourself in client shoes. If you're to put yourself in client shoes and you realize how fragmented the universe of suppliers is for them, the idea of a curated platform or a platform curated for research is being really thoughtful to clients. It's recognizing that right now, whether it's geographic or for particular solution expertise, they have to go to many different sources because of the fragmentation. So the idea that you're really pursuing is one that unifies and makes it easier for a client to do business, right?
Yeah, and it's putting the client at the center of gravity. It's being client-centric, and you don't go to client and say, "Oh, DIY is the best, and service is so outdated," and it's not true. I mean, it's frankly, it's commercially you could say that, and you could actually go up to a certain level, but are you going to really solve clients' problem? It doesn't mean that you need to do it the same way that it's been done for decades. It's a different way. The notion of a platform curated for research, and being the best platform in the world, a platform curated for research, is that notion that the experience of the client and the research experience is all embedded into the platform, but it doesn't mean that you don't need to interact with a human being in order to do stuff, or for a human being to support you within that research process. It's really reconciling or building that junction between technology on one part and services on the other part, because it's a largely serviced industry. I mean, there is human intelligence.
So that is the key, creating this holistic, integrated research experience. We're going to ask you a couple lightning round questions. So you get to see the world, and you work with a lot of companies and brands that are really spectacular brands. So we're going to put you on the spot a little bit. So we're calling this lightning round the DNA of a gutsy brand, which we kind of, based on all our conversations, we've identified 4 core components. I'm going to throw out a component of gutsy brands and ask you to identify a brand or an ad campaign that stands out to you. So we'll start with empathy. Which is there a brand or a campaign that really stands out as understanding people?
I think of the Nike brand. If I ask, first of all, because I'm trying to be a runner, and I think Nike understand what it means to run. I mean, it's really from day one, and I think it's a brand that embrace all type of different people, regardless of where they come from, and that's at least the vision I have of that brand. And it's fantastic because it's a brand that we were almost born with. I'm talking about myself, and it's still a great brand. I mean, tell me of brands that have
still
such
modern
are
and
still
relevant
still
and
modern. It's
cutting
not a
edge.
luxury brand. It's not a luxury brand, but it's really a very very long-standing brand, and people love it. I mean, it's they love it. So I would say Nike.
So the second one is being innovative. It's pioneering, creating new ways of thinking or new ways of doing business. Is there a brand that stands out to you?
I think I would say, I don't know if it's innovative, but it's this notion of the outsider coming and completely reinventing an industry. So, and I would take Virgin Galactic, Virgin, the brand Virgin, in which I don't know if you're familiar
Yes,
with
yeah,
that brand in
absolutely.
the US. Yeah, and I think it's how this brand is coming and disrupting some market with that value proposition. And the latest one is that everyone knows about is the space.
Is there a brand that sticks out to you that has done a really good job of being bold and sticking to being bold?
Yeah, I think maybe it's obvious what I'm going to say. So I'm sorry for the audience. I'm not going to bring a brand that's. I think Tesla for me is a brand that has been extremely bold. Not just the notion of that electric vehicle, but even when the first time you enter a Tesla, it's a shock. It's completely changing the way what the experience of driving, or even the experience of being a passenger. Now people are more used to it. But even if you go to a Tesla and you go to another electrical vehicle, it's a complete different experience still. And I think that from that standpoint, it's a very bold company and brand.
Interesting. That's a great example. And then the last one can be a little bit tougher, but in our business, there are so many brands and companies who feel they have to make trade-off decisions and compromise. And we think that the brands who really stand out the most are the ones who actually seize on an opportunity where others might see a trade-off or might compromise it.
I'm not sure that our audience internationally would hear of that brand. There is a brand in France and in Europe called Free, like Free, and it's in the telecommunication space. And they came with this value proposition that you could have a mobile subscription, for up as low as a couple of euro per month, like, and that it was really the democratization of being able to communicate. And they came with initially the internet connectivity, so they were the first one to bring unlimited internet. I mean, now for our audience here, it's mad. I mean, how can it not be unlimited? But at the time, it was limited, unlimited internet, and then unlimited communication. And I think that's somewhere where you identify that you could have a valuable business proposition by not doing it the same way than the others. And the innovation is in the packaging of the offer, rather than an innovation which is technological. It's not a technology innovation. It's really how you package things.
So now that's actually, those are great examples. So now we're going to get to know you a little bit more personally. And we call this section Spill Your Guts. So the first thing is, and you from Tunisia, grew up in France. What's the first brand you remember as a child, and why was it memorable?
The first one is not a brand. Okay, I'm sorry. It's a product. It's a product that I used to have almost every day in Tunisia, which was a kind of a Tunisian donut. So there is no brand. There was a small shop, and I wanted my donuts from only that shop. I mean, that's which is almost, it could have become a brand. I don't remember how it's the shop was called, but that's this image of like.
Is it still around?
Actually, funny enough, I went to Tunisia over the summer, and it's still around. That place is still around. It's probably the great grandchildren or whatever, and still around.
And is it as good as you remember?
It's as good as I remember. Yes, as
so
good as I remember.
Maybe you should turn it into a brand and franchise.
Yeah, maybe I have some idea. Yeah. But the other brand is Disney.
Did you go there as a child?
No, Disney because of the cartoons, that there was only one channel or two channel in Tunisia, and we had like one every evening. We had like not Disney Channel, but we had like a Disney cartoon. So that was Disney, the first brand I truly remember.
That's great. Is there a book or a movie that kind of represents your career journey and why?
No, I don't. I don't think it represents my career journey, but I think this notion of always trying and always, fighting hard. The notion that if you're in the action, you can't lose. By that I mean status quo is a problem. I mean, if you don't, and so I think that the whole series of the Rocky Balboa movies. I like this. I like this because at times he's a winner. At times it's more challenging, but he's always. It's almost like if the journey is more important than the result. I mean, and I think that's something that that I like.
But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done.
That's great. So how do you describe what you do for a living to a child? How do you describe your job simply?
Oh, they don't understand. I keep saying I ask people questions, and I try to. I say I ask people questions so that they can that we can build product or food that you love, and I give them example. But it's very hard to explain. The minute I said that, though, and they ask, but how do you do that? And I said, well, we have people who answer the question. I said, why and what are you doing? And I said, well, they're very loyal. And we give them some points. And every time I say that to my the family, the kids' family, they said, oh, can I join the panel? Can I? Because they want to. They want to participate. They want to participate, and they love the idea of their. I noticed something is that the idea of giving your opinion goes across ages and social class and all backgrounds. People love to give their opinion. They love to give their opinion. And I think this is really great for our industry. And if we're a big believer, even at the age of big data, we have data science team. Rob, you're a fantastic data science team as well. The notion of the individual giving their opinion is still extremely relevant, not just because of first party data, but believing in human giving their opinion.
You've already given us shared some stories, but is there a particular piece of advice that you would give to someone who is trying to build a new company, build a brand, trying to stand out in the most competitive market the world's ever seen? Is there any one piece of advice that stands out for you?
Yeah, it's very hard. It's always, it's listen, even if you pretend initially that no, I don't like the idea that you're giving me, and it's not. Just digest it and listen to people around you. You ultimately you have to make decision, but you have to listen to those people and try to. It's very hard because when things are good, it's easy. When things are not as good, it's very tough. I try to be very agile. On making decision. I always say an average good decision taken on time is better than the best decision taken too late. And I think that it's easy when you're 15, 20, 50, but when you're 1500, like we are, it becomes very hard. So you have to delegate to do that. So I think also the notion of delegation is very important in companies, even at the early days. Finally, I mean, there's a lot of advice. It's always to try, to hire people you have to hire people who are better than you are, because otherwise you kind of hiring people who are not better than you are. I mean, why for?
All right. So now the last one, and this is where we have fun and we learn something about your personality. We're compiling a Gutsy brand playlist. What song would you add to our playlist?
Yeah, I'm French, so I'm gonna give a French singer. Maybe people would know. I would give Edith Piaf. Edith Piaf is a French singer. She wrote La Vie en Rose. I mean, she basically, it's a very famous song. And the reason why they're all playlists, because this is the example of someone that against all odds, hugely talented person, very tough upbringing, we would say in English, very tough upbringing, and truly became a global star. She would probably have millions of fans today. I mean, if she had been at the time of social media and so on. So she went to the Carnegie Hall. She went everywhere across the globe, and being that huge personality, even beyond the songs that she played.
This has been great, and Toluna is a fabulous company you've built from, to hear about those early days of no sales to 250 to 500 to 1.5 to 4.5. That's extraordinary, and now to see that you're many multiples of that around the world and making a difference for brands and companies and people all over the world is a fabulous achievement. So congratulations, and thanks for joining us today.
And thank you for, I'm very happy at Toluna to join forces with GutCheck. We love the brand, and we love the people, and we love the value proposition that you brought to market. A fantastic company.
Thank you.
Well, Rob, it was great to hear from Frédéric about the history and vision of Toluna, especially now that GutCheck is part of Toluna.
Always good to hear from the founder and CEO of the company you now work for.
Definitely. So let's get into it. What are our takeaways from today's episode?
Well, I think the first one is that any of our guests with a European accent of any sort are automatically more impressive than than the rest of us. One of the big takeaways for me is so much of what we've been kind of learning in the Gutsiest Brands podcast is about people who are building brands in a very intentional way. And what we saw and heard from Frédéric, I think, is an entrepreneur who was really all about building a business. And kind of the brand is built with the business, as opposed to some of the others who are really excellent marketers, not that Frédéric isn't, are building brands and kind of the business goes along with it, almost in more sync. And I think when I listened to the story of Toluna and how it's been developed as a global leader, it's very much about the business and how we built the business, and the brand is a result of that, as opposed to the opposite way around.
Yeah, I agree. And one of the big things I took away from it is how thoughtful he was about how your vision can kind of take an unlikely turn based on feedback or based on engineering. So there are a lot of people that contribute to a product being successful or a brand being successful. And it was great to hear, a fearless leader, a CEO, calling out an engineering team and how important they are in innovation.
Absolutely. And connected to that is just the principle of agility that Toluna has been through, like a lot of companies, but Toluna as a company and a brand has been through a variety of iterations, and have moved with the market and helped to move the market into different places. And that being adaptable, being agile, which is obviously an innovation principle, but it's also a strategic philosophy that's been at the center of Toluna's evolution.
Thanks again for joining us for another episode of the Gutsiest Brands podcast. If you haven't already, be sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss our next episode. To hear Frédéric's song selection, check out the Gutsiest Brands playlist on Spotify. If you like what you're hearing, please consider sharing our episode with a friend and leaving us a 5-star review. See you next time.